Speaking of Cults podcast is presented solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from it is at the user's own risk. The views, information, or opinions expressed by the host and guests are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute medical or other professional advice. Hello and welcome to the Speaking of Cults podcast. This is Chris Shelton, your host. Thank you for joining me this week. We've got a few things to go over for this last episode of 2024. I hope that you all have had a decent year, and instead of doing a retrospective or look back at what's been going on this last year or in the past, I thought we might look forward a little bit. But of course, looking forward is always best done by being informed about the past. So maybe actually we're going to do a little bit of both in this episode. And we're going to go down a little bit of a different rabbit hole today than we usually do. There is the concept of a cheat code. If any of you are familiar with the old Star Trek movies, Wrath of Khan, then you'll know about a prefix code that you have to use in order to make things run on a starship. Well, in order to make things run in a society or in a culture, you have to understand the economics of the situation. And I've long sort of put out, for very many years, I've sort of said that the study of the humanity or human dynamics or behavior is a complicated study because there are so many things that influence and inform our decision making. And money and finances and resources and resource management and logistics. These are all these big, weighty business words that get thrown around on business channels and, this sort of thing. But these are very, very significant words to the quality of your life and mine. These are words that have everything to do with whether we had a good Christmas or a bad Christmas, whether we got a good Christmas bonus or no Christmas bonus of any kind, whether we are working for ourselves or whether we're working for somebody else, and the benefits and problems that come with either one of those scenarios. Economics and our economic situation here in the United States is the sort of cheat code that you need in order to understand why things are the way they are and why people act the way they do. Economics is not psychology. I don't mean to say that it is everything to do with this, but if you don't understand what's going on with this stuff, then people are going to be rather mysterious to you. And why people do what they do is going to be rather mysterious. And so I thought today we might go down a little bit of this rabbit hole only because it's necessary to understand the situation that we are in right now, historically and economically, and even, as we will show today, as I'm going to go, even in terms of cult involvement. What do these things have to do with each other? Well, actually, I believe quite a bit. Why are people driven to join cults? Not individually, but on a group basis. How does this happen? And how can we understand this so that we can do something about it? That's basically what I want to do today. And I'm actually going to show, even though this is a podcast, I am going to throw some graphs up on the screen as we're going here, but it's not absolutely necessary that you see these, but I will put a link in the show notes to the article where I am drawing these graphs from. And this is just one article that is very convenient for me today to lay out the case I'm making, but I highly recommend that you look into this through more than just this one article from the Economic Policy Institute. I think that there's a wealth of information out there analyzing and breaking down the various, you could say, the various rungs of the socioeconomic ladder that is or constitutes the United States. And this ladder has been changing and morphing over the last 40 years in a way that has been highly destructive to our class system, to our morale and hope as a country, and to our economic viability as a country. Now, rather than getting into deep numbers, I do not want to throw a lot of numbers around today. I'm going to do my best to try to minimize talk about that and not get deep into the minutia or the weeds of this stuff. But at the same time, I want to give you a big kind of overview of where things stand over the last 40, 50 years, because it's this scope of picture that's necessary to look at in order to see why we've arrived to where we've arrived to. So starting off from this I am drawing from an article called Wage Stagnation in 9 Charts. The cheat code here to understanding the U.S. economy and rising divisive sentiments politically, religiously, and culture war-wise, there's a lot of irons in this fire. There's a lot of reasons why things are the way that they are. But I will say that these economic factors are sort of axial. They're sort of core. They're in the middle of all of this. Everything else is attached to these graphs or these facts that I'm going to give you, and are either a consequence or an influencer of these facts in very significant ways. In other words, because of economic strife and anxiety and stress, we have culture war problems. Because of economic strife and anxiety and stress, we have job-related problems. We have religion-related problems. These things have something to do with each other, right? Because rising stress levels and anxiety levels in individuals collectively results in some pretty funny and weird and strange group behavior. And this is kind of how this stuff works, right? So understanding these things, well, has a lot to do with understanding why things are the way they are. And basically, in a nutshell, our country has suffered from rising income inequality and chronically slow growth in the living standards of low and moderate income Americans. Things have not been growing at the rate they should. And what does this mean? What is this? In a summary statement, what am I saying? I'm saying that your money doesn't buy as much as it used to. And that's a non-political statement. That has nothing to do with who you support in DC or local or state or anything having to do with any of that. That's an economic fact. Your money doesn't go as far as it used to. We all know this is a fact. And there are lots and lots of apologists and people in our society who believe that this is how things are supposed to be, and they just sort of hunker down with this bunker mentality and believe that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and this is just the natural order of things. But the fact of the matter is that there is nothing natural about this, and it is not the natural order of things that it be this way. However, if you've been listening to me talk recently about anacyclosis, this historical cycle of government change and economic change that happens with societies over time, then you'll understand why this is happening or what this is all about. This is part of that cycle of change that inevitably drives the course of civilizations, their rise and their fall. And while I don't want to think about the United States as a failing, falling country, economically speaking, right now, it is being pushed in that direction by elements in our society. And that push and the reaction and push back against it is the source of a great deal of the conflict that you and I are experiencing right now, and a major reason why our money doesn't spend like it used to. The wage stagnation is the reason why our money doesn't go the way that it used to go as far as it used to go. The cost basically breaks down. Again, you can read this entire article. I'm going to throw some graphs up now to sort of paint the picture. The The cost of unequal growth to middle income households. Basically, what's been happening is inflation has been rising at a particular level, but wages have not. And here is a graph that shows that. This is figure 2 from the article. Workers produced much more, but typical workers' pay lagged far behind. This graph goes from 1948 to 2013 and shows that from 1948 to 1973, up until 1973, these lines are parallel. They were following one another. When the inflation went up, your pay went up. The money you took home went up commensurate with the rise of prices of goods and services. And because of that, you could still afford them even though the prices were going up. And this went from 1948 all the way up until 1973 when things started slipping. Hourly compensations started flatlining while inflation and productivity kept going up. Okay, so this graph here shows actual productivity, not inflation, but the inflation graph is actually kind of similar. So here you see that the compensation started flatlining while what we were producing went up and up and up. Now, the injustice that is connected with this and the sort of teeth-gnashing class war that has been developing in this country for the last 40 years is shown here in these graphs. When it comes to the pace of annual pay increases, the top 1% wage grew 138% since 1979, while wages for the bottom 90% grew 15%. So the graph really shows this massive disparity where the top 1% of our society are getting pay increases or wage increases of 138%. They're making not only what they were making, they're making double what they were making, more than double what they were making, while the bottom 90% barely see a 15% increase in their wages over the same time. This is wage stagnation. This is wages not going anywhere, right? They're stagnating. Stagnant wages for middle wage workers, declining wages for low wage workers. The hourly wages of middle wage workers were stagnant, rising just 6%. This is bad. Right? Unemployment only fell to 4%, but the wage, it was bad, okay? And college grads have not particularly had it any better than the rest of society. The widespread problem of stagnant hourly wages is not a problem of insufficiently skilled or educated workers. A four-year college degree has been no guarantee of decent wage growth. In fact, because of the rising costs college tuition rates have gone up even more than the 1% wage increases have. The 1% have been making more and more and more, right? 138% of what they were making back in the 70s. College tuition rates have gone up even more than that over that same time period. So college is more and more expensive and giving less and less return when it comes to job certainty and job pay and wage. So people have been paying more and more for less and less return on that investment, which is why colleges have been, or universities have been suffering in reputation, because they have becoming more and more elite institutions that only the top 1% of our society can afford to even be part of. And therefore, the whole university system has become a class status symbol. There are people who are graduating major Ivy League name universities who are living 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 people to an apartment, trying to earn or eke out a living at what used to be a high-end job like in tech or research or academia, and not so much now. And this is just one of the many sort of ways that this wage stagnation has manifested itself. On top of this, the class war that is brewing in this country, as recently as a couple weeks ago with Luigi Mangione killing Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare. That it didn't just come out of nowhere. Employers are cutting health care for young workers, both college and high school graduates. And this graph here shows how the share of employed recent high school and college graduates with health insurance provided by their employers has gone from 60 down to 31%. And for college grads and for high school grads, it's gone from 25% down to 7% over the same time. So we are seeing less and less health care being provided by more and more companies to college and high school grads, to their employees over this time, which means that they have to pay for their health care some other way. It has to come from some other source and has to come out of some other, it has to come out of their bank account because it's not coming out of the employers. It's no longer being offered as a benefit, right, of employment as often. Now, on top of that, on top of this situation of companies paying employees less than they should be and giving less benefits than they should, and university education, which is often the cost of getting the high-paying jobs, well, not so much anymore, that dream dying off. In addition to all of that, you also have the fact that CEO pay is grabbing a larger share of wages now than ever before. In a nation of increasing inequality, the most extreme wage disparities are between the heads of large American corporations and typical workers. This figure tracks the ratio of pay of CEOs at the 350 largest public U.S. firms and shows that CEOs make 296 times what the typical worker makes. Yeah. And the solutions to this have been being cut down, cut apart, taken apart from within. Minimum wage has either not risen or has just been stagnant this entire time. While productivity has been rising, people have been doing more, have been becoming more efficient, more productive, producing higher quality, higher value products. Their pay is going nowhere, and the hourly wage of a typical worker from 1970 to 2010 has remained less than $12.50 an hour. Minimum wage has not touched any of this. It just hasn't even been a solution of any kind, while yet it was supposed to be that. And collective bargaining. The decline in union membership mirrors the income gains of the top 10%. Unions have been taken out of the equation almost entirely by the heads of these massive major international corporations and business owners, and as a result, the collective bargaining power of the workers has suffered enormously. Now, you've heard about the union, the strikes and things that have been happening recently. Have they been resulting in higher pay and wages and solving this problem? Barely. We're talking about Band-Aids on top of a 40 or 50-year situation. And I only lay all of that out to make it clear that while we keep being told by business and news media that the America's productivity as measured in a statistic called gross domestic product, GDP. While we're being told that this is going up and up and up, because it is, America is producing more and more of value across the boards, that's not all there is to a healthy economy, is it? Right? We know by looking deeply into Scientology organizations and statistics that a Scientology church can have a rising gross income up and up and up and up and up. But if other key statistics or markers of production in that organization don't follow that income, then rising income all by itself can become a problem and a real serious issue. Because if, for example, with Scientology, if they are not delivering all of the services that people are paying for, then people aren't going to keep paying for services because they're not getting anything for the money, and they leave and they walk out, and you got to go knock on their door and drag them back in and all of that we've been talking about for years. So just because a number or a statistic is going up on a graph doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. Now, GDP for America going up is a healthy statistic. The only thing worse than that is GDP going down. We don't want that. But to not have the wage growth and the prosperity of the individual worker rise commensurate with our overall health and production tells the workers that they are valueless, that they are not given any importance or consideration, and that their work is being taken advantage of, that they are being taken for granted, and that they can be fired or let go of at any time, and it's no big deal. They don't have any worth. What happens when an entire country is dealt with that way? What happens when an entire class of people, the middle class, are pushed, suppressed, if you will, into lower and lower wages, lower and lower ability to navigate the problems and situations of their life, provide for their children, provide for their family, even buy a house, buy a car, be able to have the barest necessities of what we think of as a quality life here in the United States? What happens when you push all those people down, down, down into this more and more depressed and more anxious and stress-filled environment? Well, one thing that happens as a result of this is a rise in trauma responses and a rise, therefore, in cult recruitment and cult membership. One follows the other, as certain as night follows day. And that is what we have to look forward to coming into our future because of these conditions. These conditions have created, I will go so far out on a limb and say, these conditions over the last 40 years have helped create the cult scare and phenomena that we see rife in the United States and Western nations these days. Cults have always been around because stress and trauma and difficult lives have always been around. And people are looking desperately for answers, simple answers to complex problems. That's what cults provide, and that's what cult leaders use and leverage to gain power over unsuspecting victims. Uniformly, that formula is the formula for how cults work. Whether it's Scientology or the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Mormons, they have a problem, that you have a problem, they have a solution. The solution is simple, it's direct, it's to the point, it's obvious. How could everybody not see this? Well, everybody doesn't see it because it's too simple of a solution. It's never a solution. It's really just more of the same problems, repackaged, re-explained, given different language, loaded language, and then delivered as a solution. L. Ron Hubbard with Scientology offers no real solutions to any problem other than feel better about it, manifest solution-oriented thinking, be positive in your approach, and apply these ridiculous procedures, and you can't help but win. In a nutshell, those things I just said, that's all there is to Scientology. Yet, very rich, very important people throw millions and millions and millions of dollars at it. And will continue to do so long as the conditions of our society are the way that they are, and people are suffering and struggling the way that they are. And suffering and struggling is kind of the human condition. So, thus, cults will always be a problem. But the prediction here, and the point that I'm making right now in today's episode, is that the cult problem in Western worlds is not only going to continue, but because of these factors of economic difficulty and social unrest and social disruptions caused by social media, short attention span theater, the fact that people can't think as well as they could 40 years ago. I think that's a pretty true statement. And by as well as, I mean thinking in longer term concepts. Short attention span theater dominates our thinking now. It's conditioned the last couple generations. And this is a well understood phenomenon, very well studied. I'm not making this up. You can look at the studies that have been done on social media platforms and what it does to people's anxiety levels and stress levels and knowledge and ability to consume information. This is the direct reason why we have a post-truth environment right now, where truth itself is up for grabs. The very concept of whether truth even exists is debatable in today's environment, media environment. And that is an epistemological disaster. It's a nightmare. We have to be able to say that there are true things in this world and define what those true things are and live according to those true things. But in the clash of, short attention span, reactionary trauma drama theater that makes up most of our public social media life these days, people don't have time for deep thoughts like that, right? It's react, act, react, act, react, act. That's what the dumbing down of our society has sort of become. All of these things are reversible, but we have to take a good, hard look at these problems and where they're actually coming from if we ever are going to have any hope of solving them. And so I thought bringing these out into the light might be, something worth talking about. Again, I didn't want to take a long time today. This is a shorter episode than usual, but I wanted to point out these problems because they are driving everything else that's happening right now. I could go into, what this has to do with our political, ideological views right now, and the fact of rising populism in the United States is a direct result of these graphs and situations I've been talking about today. People want a change. They are fed up with how things are, but they're not quite sure why things are the way they are. It could be this, could be that, could be the other thing. In a post-truth environment, trying to sort out the facts of something is made 20 times more challenging because people believe that facts and truth are relative. Your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth, and what's the big deal, man? Right? That's cult thinking. That's Scientological thinking. Your truth, my truth, right? This kind of thing. So we need to be aware of this kind of sloppy thinking, non-critical thinking that is kind of rampant in our society right now. It is not a matter of the oligarchs and 0.1% of our socioeconomic ladder are maliciously, purposefully trying to suppress the middle class and lower classes out of existence. It's worse than that. Because it's people who just don't have a clue about what they're doing. Nobody ever said that the people in the top 0.1% of our economic system are any smarter than you or me. They're not. In fact, in many ways, they are far more ignorant about how the world works because they've never had to hold a job or suffered or had to sweat over whether their rent was going to get paid or anything like that. And this could be perceived as us versus them kind of talk right now, those stupid rich people who just don't understand. Okay, that's not exactly that's not exactly the point I'm trying to make. I'm trying to say that these people are not, it's the conspiracy theorists of the world don't grasp this whole picture either, right? Again, simple answers for complex problems. Cults offer that, conspiracy theorists offer that. That's not where we want to go with any of this. So anyway, I offer all of this as an attempt to explain the situation that we're in, and why cults are growing, and why cult membership is, kind of going to continue to be a problem for us moving into 2025. There's an additional factor I wanted to put out here today in terms of the awareness of this, which is that I do not see or predict right now that the incoming administration into the White House is going to be in any way a barrier or block to cult expansion in 2025 and moving forward. The individuals who are being proposed for positions such as Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, could not be more cult friendly. Pam Bondi, for example, is straight up in Scientology's pocket. I mean that literally. They literally own her. So we don't have any particular reason here looking forward to think that on a legal front things are going to get more difficult for cults. I don't think that's true. I think things are going to get easier for them. And this puts every single lesson, every single thing we've put out here on this channel about cults, it kind of raises the importance of it, right? Understanding the signs, looking for the red flags, watching for deception and deceit and coercive control coming at you individually. Please have your eyes open, your ears open, and your head straight, and watch what's happening as we move forward. Watch for people who are trying to take advantage of the chaos and confusion that is coming with all of this nonsense, who are not offering solutions, but really just trying to take advantage of the situation. There's an awful lot of that going on right now. Chaos is an opportunity for a lot of people. And these numbers represent an awful lot of, when there's trauma and stress and anxiety, there's a lot of chaos, right? People start reacting to things rather than thinking things through. So beware. Pay attention. Have your eyes open. And if you really want to do something about this situation, the bigger picture situation of wage stagnation and the cultural divisiveness and divides that we're faced with, if you really want to step up and do something about it, get involved locally, in your local area, at your city level, at your county level. The school boards, city council, the business bureaus, anything, political parties, anything that is something you're interested in, you're passionate about, I would highly recommend getting involved now. There's never been a time where your voice, wouldn't matter more than now. I mean, now is the time to step up and do something if you not like what's happening. And solving the right problems is an effective use of your time. So be a good critical thinker. Find out what's going on. Dive into some information. Get involved. Do something. Don't take this information, please, and just use it to be afraid. That's not why I'm giving it to you. I want to empower you. And I hope that today's episode helps do that by painting a more clear picture of where we're at and what we can do about things. And while this is a pretty unusual episode of the Speaking of Cults podcast, I hope that it was still entertaining, informative, and educational in some fashion. And thank you very much for coming around and listening. All right. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.